Okay, so what the A, most of you got right, but not even all of you. Remember that the absolute value cannot, or the X can't be an absolute value and it can't be squared. That's a good way to lose all the points, okay? So don't do that. There's no partial credit if it's a yes, and it's if you put yes and it's supposed to be a no, that's it, you lost them all, okay? So if it is in absolute value or if it is squared, it is a no, it's not a function. Then the second one is a function because it's the square root. Square root's fine. So the first thing I did was I subbed out f of x for y. Then I switched the x and the y. And then you have to solve this equation for the new y. So you're going to multiply by 2 on both sides of the equation. It cancels from here. And I end up with 2x equals square root of y minus 3. Then you can, if you square this, so like some of you did this, that means I have to do the square root of y minus 3 times the square root of y minus 3, and I end up with a root y in my function. And then you end up having to square your equation again. Don't do that. That's awful, okay? Makes it so much harder. You want to isolate the square root first. So I'm going to first move the 3. It eliminates it from here, and then I have 2x plus 3 equals the square root of y. Now I square both sides of the equation, and I get here. And you can stop there. Some of you expand and FOIL that, which is going to take extra time you don't need to do. You can stop there. The last thing you have to do is put back in your f negative 1 of x, okay? So again, a lot of people got it right, but not everybody. So please make sure that you're careful in a lot of it was the work, like the how to solve for y. Just be really, really careful. That goes back to like your algebra 2 skills. All right, this one again, I didn't get through all of them, but most of them good. This is your x, y. This is your h, k. You have to know y equals a, parentheses, x minus h squared plus k. So then 5 equals a, x is negative 3, h, so minus 1, and k, which is actually negative 7, so minus 7. Don't make a mistake on the order of operations here. This would be 16. We do not subtract 16 and 7. We don't do 16 minus 7 here. We add the 7. 12 equals a times 16. Divide by 16. And 4 goes into both of those. It'd be 3/4. Then you plug back in and make sure you're plugging back in the right one, the h, the k, and the a. So y equals 3/4 x minus 1 squared minus 7 is your equation. And you can leave that one as y. You can make it f of x too. That's fine. We didn't, like, it's not like y and fx are the same things. It's not like saying y and f negative 1. That's a big deal. All right, this one got a little messy, and it was intentional. You are not going to naturally have pretty numbers here, okay? So you got to make sure that you're careful with your work. So if it says find the standard form of the function, remember there's 2 questions on this quiz. One that's going with quadratics, one that's going to put it in standard form. That's why I'm making you do it here. And the other one in which you get to choose so you can fall on you can go back to negative b over 2a. That's going to be faster, okay? Especially if you're not great at your complete the square. But there is one that says you have to complete the square. So the first thing I'm going to do is do that. I'm going to group together the 5x squared and the 3x. I'm going to leave the space because I'm going to fill it, and I'm going to bump the minus 2 to the other side. There's a number on the front of the x term, so I have to take it out. So 5 goes outside. I divide both of these by 5. And again, most of you did pretty good up to here. Then I have to find this missing term. To do that, I take my second term, which is 3/5. I divide it by 2 and square it. When we divide a fraction by a number, it's the same thing as saying keep, change, flip. So it's the same thing as saying multiply by a half, and that becomes 3/10. And 3/10 squared is 9/100. So I'm going to add that inside the parentheses. And normally I subtract it from outside the parentheses to keep it balanced. But you have to multiply by the 5 first. 5 goes into 120 times. So I am subtracting 9/20 from that negative 2. I have to give the 2 a like denominator. So 2 over 1 becomes 40 over 20, and it's negative because of this negative sign, minus 9/20, which is negative 49/20, which is what this is. 5 stays on the front. then to factor this, I square root the first term. I square root the 9/100ths, which goes back to before we squared it, so 3/10. I take the sign from the middle, minus, put it in parentheses and square it, and then subtract those 49/20ths. This is the standard form of my function. If I had time to check, I could do negative b over 2a. I would strongly recommend it, so at least you check to see if your x is right, okay? And then hopefully you can catch a mistake if not. So now from here, my vertex is the opposite of what follows x, which would be 3/10, and the y, or the k, which is 49/20. You can do a quick check. Like I could literally go negative b over 2a on here, negative 3 over 2 times 5, and I get 3/10. And now I know at least my x is right, because if your x is wrong, a lot of things are wrong after this, okay? But at least you can kind of do a quick check. Do negative b over 2a and check to make sure your x is right at that point. If it's not, you can try to find your mistake. But here's the other thing. We call these like carry-through errors. If you get this equation wrong, there are going to be points devoted to that part of the quiz, and you will get points docked from there. But if this is wrong and then you use it correctly from this point, I'm not going to dock you again. Does that make sense? So like if this is wrong, so then you make your access wrong, and then you make your all the rest of this wrong based on your wrong, complete the square, I'm not going to continue to dock you each time, okay? You'll get the points taken off at the complete the square part, but not as you move forward. So if for some reason you left that as negative 3/5, let's just say, and then you say that your vertex is 3/5, that's technically wrong, but it's based off of your equation, so you won't lose points in both places, okay? We call it a carry-through mistake. So then from here, our axis of symmetry is x equals what? 3/10, and it has to have the x equals. That's one of the things that you will lose points on. X equals 3/10, okay? Domain, here's an answer to a question on your quiz. What's the domain on every parabola? Negative infinity to positive infinity, all real numbers, okay? Your range, to do this, I'm going to picture what this graph looks like. Which direction does this face? Up. My vertex is 3/10 and negative 49/20, which is negative 2 and 9/20. So I'm going to go 3/10 and negative 2 and 9/20, and I'm going to plot my vertex. And it points up. So that tells me my range goes from negative 49/20, God bless you, to positive infinity. I'm going to go back to my x-intercepts. The y-intercept is easiest from the original equation, okay? It would be 0 here and 0 here, so my y-intercept is 0, negative 2. And my minimum, I can already tell. I'm going to tell it that it literally says circle 1. You're going to circle that it's a minimum because this opens upward. And the minimum is the k coordinate of your vertex, which is negative 49/20. Just that, not the coordinate point, just the k. Now I'm going to do my intercepts. So for the intercepts, I would suggest you go back to the original. It's going to be factorable at this point. We'll get to quadratic formula soon, but we didn't do it yet. So we're going to come here. And I would say 0 equals 5x squared minus 3x minus 2. And then I can either do trial and error or first times last. 5 times negative 2 equals negative 10. Factors of negative 10 that sum to negative 3, negative 5, positive 2. And I get 5x squared minus 5x plus 2x minus 2. And then I'm going to factor by grouping. Take out a 5x, x minus 1. Take out a 2, x minus 1. And I get x minus 1 and 5x plus 2. Split and solve this. And I get x equals 1 and x equals negative 2/5. So my x-intercepts are 1, 0 and negative 2/5, 0. So I plot that. 1, 0, negative 2/5, 0, and a y-intercept at 0, negative 2. And then I would draw my graph. You can solve for your x-intercepts using this, okay? You'd have to add the 49/20, then you'd have to divide by 5, then you'd have to square root doing a plus and minus, then you'd have to add the 3/10. It's a lot of fraction work, so I would say avoid it if you can. Questions on that? Yeah.
To get your other points, you have just done success stretch because you have done like 5 for 1 for the slope.
Yeah, but you should be able to graph it from your intercepts. Yep. I'll do this last one because I don't want to rush through it. Actually, I'll start it, but I'll finish on the video, okay? But this was from 2, 3, so it's going to put it all to 2, all together like this. You're going to identify the end behavior. It's a positive and an even power, which means they both point up. Or rise is left, rise is right, you could put. I don't know why I just put that spot. That's that spot, okay? Now I want to find the zeros. So I'm going to set my function equal to 0. I'm going to take out a 2. You don't have to, but it makes it easier to factor. And then factors of x to the 4th, or x squared and x squared. Factors of negative 15 that sum to negative 2 would be negative 5 and positive 3. And then I'm going to split and solve this. 2 can never equal 0, so I ignore that one. And then I'd get x squared equals 5. X equals plus and minus the square root of 5. And I'd get x squared equals negative 3. And I'd get x equals plus and minus the square root of negative 3. Since it's an imaginary number, I also ignore that. And then these are the x values of my zeros. So negative square root 5 and positive square root 5. So when I list them, I'm going to keep them exact. But when I graph these, I'm going to approximate it. It's just bigger than square root 4. So this is like a 2.1, positive and negative. The y-intercept, I can go directly back up to the original. This would be 0 and 0, and so it would be 0, negative 30. So now when I go graph this, I'm going to plot my negative 2.1 and positive 2.1, and a 0 at, or a y-intercept negative 30 is going to be like all the way down here. I don't need to plot 30 little tick marks. I just want to mark it. They both point up, and if you remember, this resembles a quadratic. So it's going to come down and come back up again, and that would be the overall shape. There's going to be lots of different options with these, so you want to make sure you prepare for any kind of shape, any kind of factoring. There's a bunch of different options on the quiz review. Have a great day.